Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. Remember to subscribe to our free podcast so you won't miss any of our illuminating content. Here is episode 207.
My core message is that I have a passion for encouraging moms and families, really, to find simple solutions for more joy-filled lives.
Benjamin Franklin once said, "Do not curse the darkness, rather light a candle instead." If you're ready to set your mind on fire, then prepare yourself for the Luminous Mind with your host, Rebecca Bowman.
Today's fire starter is Kristi Clover. Kristi Clover is a Christian homeschooling mom of 5 kids, ranging from teens to tots and wife to her high school crush. Aside from her family and chocolate, she's passionate about encouraging women in their faith and inspiring them in their daily lives as moms, wives, and homeschoolers by offering simple solutions for a more joy-filled life. Not surprisingly, you can usually find her at home trying to bring some order and fun into the mayhem of daily life. Kristi is a down-to-earth writer and an energetic speaker who loves to share about her adventures in marriage, motherhood, and homeschooling at KristiClover.com and on her new podcast, the Simply Joyful Podcast. Kristi is also the creator of the Ultimate Homeschool Organization course and the author of Homeschool Basics, How to Get Started, Keep Motivated, and Bring Out the Best in Your Kids, which is co-authored by Tricia Goyer. Be sure to connect with Kristi online for an extra dose of encouragement for your day and get a free copy of her book, Sanity Savers for Moms, by going to her website. I think that's how I'm going to say it.
No worries.
Which will be linked at our website as well. But welcome, Kristi.
Thank you. Hello.
I am so positive that there are many people, including myself, that need your message of organization and simple, joyful living. But before we get into any of that, can you please tell our audience a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. Well, I am actually, my husband and I just celebrated 20 years.
Wow,
Woo-hoo!
That's awesome.
So I have been married to my husband, Steve, for 20 years. And we have a fun little backstory that I like to say, as you mentioned earlier, that he's my high school crush. He and I actually had a crush on each other at different times in high school, but never dated. We went to the same college, but never dated, and then ran into each other at church. And in fact, because that's where we met in high school, was at our church youth group. And so at our little, church, we both ended up back at church on Father's Day and ran into each other. And I went home that night and told my roommate, "Do you remember Steve Clover? I'm going to marry him." And so 20 years later, 5 kids added. We've got kids, they range actually from 15 down to 4.
Wow.
And I've been doing this whole online writing and speaking thing. Well, I've been speaking for over 10 years, but the blogging and podcasting and all that kind of stuff is a little bit more recent. So I've kind of been more on the online world in the last 2 years.
Well, it's really cool. I mean, you go on her website and she has so much stuff. I was just talking to her before we started recording. I don't know how she creates this much stuff, but she's got downloadables, she's got books, she's got courses, she's got a podcast, like she said. But, give us the backstory. Give us your overall message on all of these platforms of what you're trying to help.
Well, I think the backstory really does start back when I first started speaking at a MOPS group at our church. And my friend had approached me and said, "Hey, we'd love to have you speak for our group. What would you like to speak about?" And I'm like, "Well, let me pray about it." And she's like, "Okay." And she goes, "Well, hey, would you be interested in speaking about organization?" I was like, sure, I really like that. So I did pray about it. And I was like, I wanted to approach, I guess, organization differently. I mean, back when I was first kind of starting in my homemaking days 20 years ago, Martha Stewart was the big thing. And it was kind of like this, she's on this pedestal as far as everything is perfect. And I think as a mom and a homemaker, I just felt like I never added up. And I felt really overwhelmed for a long time. And then as circumstances would happen, I actually kind of refer to it as my dark days. We had a move and everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And I just kind of found myself at a point where I knew I couldn't change the circumstances in my life. I knew I could only change a few things. Like I was responsible for changing my attitude, but I was also responsible for making changes in our lives that I could have some control over. And so that's kind of where I think my real passion for organization started coming out. And that's obviously what other people were seeing, which is kind of cool when you feel like God's really putting something on your heart and other people see it. And I'm not a perfectionist. Well, I am. I'm a recovering perfectionist. But like, if you come to my house, in fact, we just got back from a marriage retreat and it made me giggle because our pastor, he said it in all like sincerity and sweetness. And he goes, I love that we can come to your house and it can be messy. And I just laughed because, well, granted, we have 13 people living in my house at this time. But, I kind of laugh that people really are blessed when you allow life to be happening in your home. And it doesn't mean that it's completely chaotic. It just means, like I have systems. And I talk about that a lot in different places, that I have systems. So I can pull my house together pretty fast. But you are near and dear to me if I don't bother to pull my house together before you come over. So yeah, my funny little rule is I like people to see the house nice and neat one time. And then the potential it has. And then you can see it however it just happens to you when you come. Again, like we put so much stress on ourselves. And so that's really the passion of all that I do. After the first few times I started speaking about organization, the conversations that I had with moms were that they were feeling so overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. And it made me sad because I don't want moms to be overwhelmed. And like they kept saying, I love the fact that you're talking about prioritizing. I love this. This seems so doable. And so that's really the passion. Is I want people to find simple ways to do things and cut out all of the extra stressors that we put on ourselves unnecessarily. And that's when we're going to find more joy. And that joy ultimately, as a Christian, for me, it comes from the Lord, but it also, it comes from relieving yourselves of those pressures.
Yeah. Well, and I think home organization, we were talking about this before we even start recording, that, we wear so many hats, especially as homeschooling moms, that, we have home, just the maintenance of the house. We've got grocery shopping. We've got dinners to make. We have, activities that we're running our kids all over. And not to mention we have schoolwork on top of that. And I just think that is just so needed. That might be many of the reasons why some people just give up and just finally send their kids back to school. Because I've had so many just regular stay-at-home moms that will say, well, I could never homeschool my kids because I need those few hours just to be able to feel like I can get my life into order. And so it's just such a needed message. Let's kind of talk about maybe the inspiration behind your book. She has a book called Sanity Savers for Mom, and it's a free digital download. But then she's got homeschooling basics on the Ultra Homeschooling Organization. Are they different? What's the overall message on them? And maybe you could talk about both of them. Start with the Sanity Savers.
Okay.
And then move into the homeschooling basics.
Yes. So Sanity Savers for Moms, it was funny because when I started blogging, they're like, you need to have a little freebie for people. So I wrote like this, point by point, here are 7 Sanity Savers. And then I was realizing that people needed more than that. And so I decided to turn it into an ebook. And I was like, all right. And I got ready to put it on Amazon. And it is on Amazon. So if you want to pay for it, you are more than welcome to. But, it is a free download because it really is my passion. It really combines 7 different areas that I feel like moms need to and it helps them with their sanity. So like anything from prioritizing to mornings to meal planning to planning fun. So it has a lot of just key components and just very practical tips. It is very practical. Like people tell me that when they read it, they feel like they're sitting down over coffee with me. And it's a really fast read. It is not overwhelming. So that's what it kind of touches on all the different areas that I'm really passionate about. So I feel like it's kind of like an introduction. Like if you like Sanity Savers for Moms, you're going to love all the other content I put out. So that's kind of part of the passion behind Sanity Savers for Moms. In fact, that's one of my favorite talks to give is when I speak at homeschool conventions, I have Sanity Savers for the homeschool mom. When I speak at moms groups, I do Sanity Savers just for moms. And, they're pretty much the same, just with a couple extra little tweaks for the homeschool moms. But it's really fun. And then Homeschool Basics was actually an almost 2-year project with Trisha Goyer. Trisha and I are really good friends, and we actually met at a homeschool convention where we were both speaking, and we were just talking through like, man, these homeschool moms need an extra dose of encouragement. And, I've been homeschooling now for 10 years, and I remember how overwhelming it was for me when I first got started. And, I was a convention junkie. I actually went to 3 homeschool conventions within a matter of like a month and a half.
Wow.
So I just felt like these speakers were my buddies and they were my friends. And they're the ones that I could like on a bad day turn to from the standpoint of I would just pop in their little audio that I'd purchased at the convention. So that was probably kind of the start behind me wanting to, I have a passion for encouraging moms because we get so overwhelmed. We put way too many things on our shoulders. And so Trish and I kind of teamed up and we're like, well, what do moms really need help with? Well, they need help getting started with homeschooling. So we start off that book actually with a bang. We started off with like our 10 best tips for homeschooling. So if people get the book for no other reason, just that chapter alone will knock your socks off. But then we also get into how to keep motivated, like not just keeping your kids motivated, like it's keeping yourself motivated. Because like you said, it's really hard. And that is where we have a chapter. I have an entire course on how to organize your homeschool, but that I have a chapter in the book about homeschool organization. I have a chapter in the book about, it's actually based off of one of my blog posts, Help, I Homeschool and My House is a Mess. And so I took that and tweaked it for the book and kind of added in some different things, but just help with those things that really bog moms down. And so that helps them to keep motivated. And then the last portion is how to bring out the best in your kids. And ultimately, I think that's really the goal of every parent. And so we talk about a lot of different things. And Trisha actually has a lot of amazing stories about how serving as a family has really impacted their family and has even grown their family. So and I know that you had an episode with Trisha, so I hope you'll check that out and listen to that. But yeah, so that's really the heart behind Homeschool Basics, is that we just really wanted a resource for homeschool families, new and old. So whether you're new to homeschooling or a veteran, we try to put a little bit of something in there for everybody.
Well, and I love how you mentioned fun. You've mentioned it a couple of times, trying to keep the fun back into it. And I really think that is really the key to having the longevity, to be able to pursue this type of lifestyle. I was listening to a podcast the other day, totally unrelated, but the guy mentioned how he suffered with depression for years and years and years, trying medication, different things like that. And then realized he was listening just a random thing, listening to a guy talk about how he needed to go back and really do the play that he used to do as a child, the stuff that you like to do.
Yeah.
But as an adult, we get busy. I mean, we've talked about, 10 different hats that women wear in our realm. And so we're always constantly moving from one thing to the other. But when he started just adding a little bit of fun back in it, his depression went away. And I really think that we would ultimately we would enjoy our lives more if we had more play in our lives. I know that's why I started homeschooling, because I had these grand pictures of us, laughing and playing and doing all the stuff. And then exactly. It turned into this, oh, come on, we got to get this done. We got to, turned more, just way more list checking than it was fun for sure. So maybe let's talk about some common struggles that you feel like people have in having like that simple, joyful life.
Well, I think a big one, I mean, there's a lot of joy suckers out there, a lot of things that like vacuum the joy out of our lives. Like, I want to vacuum the crumbs off the floor, but I don't want to vacuum the joy out of our lives. So one is, I think that we take ourselves too seriously. Like we just become like, again, overall, I think all moms kind of do this, but homeschool moms especially, because I feel like we have this extra pressure we put on ourselves to perform. Like we need to make sure our kids do really well in school so that everyone around us won't think that we're a failure and we don't feel like that we are a failure. Because a lot of times you have naysayers in your life who are waiting. They're like little people, little cats ready to pounce on you and like, so we want to make sure that we're taking that pressure off ourselves. And I think a lot of times it really boils down to understanding the why. Why are you doing what you're doing? I mean, if it's homeschooling, awesome. If it's home management, awesome. You always have to know your why. And I think people lose sight of that. So I believe when you really break down your why and look at your priorities and start making choices based on the priorities in your life, then that changes things. And so I think that's one of the challenges that a lot of moms have, is that they're doing all this stuff. They're on this crazy hamster wheel, and they have never stopped to ask themselves why. Why are we taking Latin? Why are we doing different subject, three different curriculum on, one subject? Why? Like, it's so important. And we tend to overdo it as well. And so when you look at the why, you break it down, and then I'm like, which book is it in? I think it's in Sanity Savers, but Trisha has a portion about it in Sanity Savers. And then I'm trying to think, because I'm working on another book right now. I'm like, did I write about it there? I'll give
something
you guys
that's not out there yet.
Basically, the sneak peek is that I do an ABC system. I try to see what absolutely has to say, and then I always forget what the B stands for. I do this, but I'm like, B is, I believe it needs to, that it would be, that's it. It would be best if we kept this. And then C is, it can move. And so when I think about my priorities, I will write down the things that are happening in my life. And I assign this ABC. And here's the trick, moms out there listening. You need to invite your husband along on this ride, because I tell you, they have a different perspective, and they can sometimes clearly see what is bogging us down in our home and just our family life and in our homeschool. And so they bring great perspective, because they see sometimes the stressed out look in our face faster than we see it or feel it. So that's really the biggest thing, is I think getting your priorities straight is a challenge. I think comparison is another joy stealer as well, when we start looking at what other people do. And I always try to encourage people that, social media is awesome in a lot of different things, but it's also terrifying. It's really crazy things. And I think what people need to understand is that we're looking at a highlight reel. We're looking at people's bright spot in their day most of the time. And so I always admit that if you see a pretty picture on my blog, then just know that if I'm taking a picture of, like, let's say what I made for dinner, I have swiped down everything on the counter. I will place that plate there, and I will take that picture, and then everything gets moved right back. So, like, for the picture, it's going to look tranquil because it's going to look good. It's going to look happy. But then the bigger picture, and that's what bloggers do. That's what we do on social media, is that we are going to take a great picture and get that moment. But the reality is that everybody, we all have hard days. We all have the things that we wish didn't happen, we really don't want a picture of. Even though yesterday, I'll just say we had a poop moment, as a mom. People can appreciate poop moments. I don't have to get into details, but I actually took a picture of the cleanup process because it cracked me up. I will not share that picture on social media, but I kept it for me. So But yeah, so I hope that answered that question, as far as like there's some of the challenges that I really do think we put too much pressure on ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and the whole, like you said, the comparison thing is just a huge thing. And especially when you're homeschooling, you're just trying to do the basics. And then the person next door is doing, like you said, Latin lessons and all of that. I love how you talk about bringing your husband in. There's been so many times he's like, I think you're way overdoing this. I think that this could be simplified. And I'm like, no. But really listen to them. They do have some wonderful insight into, how you can, if it's really important, and asking that why is so important. Those are things I struggled with for years. I mean, just not understanding why I was doing it, mostly for the looks of somebody else. And it wasn't really something I cared about deeply. And so don't burden your life with that. That's for sure. And everything ends up being, when you keep it simple, sometimes I feel like things end up way better than what you thought. I mean, the feelings are all good. Do you know what I mean? That's right. That's a big difference in how much you're enjoying your life. Are there negative feelings? Do your kids hate you because you forced them to do, all these things that they don't care about, or you're doing things you don't care about, or something like that? And anyway, the feelings are good there. So.
Oh yeah. And you mentioned depression, and I people might be surprised, and I'm pretty open with it when I speak and do things, that a lot of times, because when I started doing live streaming, goodness, I guess it's been over a year. Has it been 2 years? It's been 2 years. Oh my goodness. I've been doing live for 2 years. But people kept going, oh, you're always so happy and upbeat. And I am, because I do have that element. My kids, my family, my friends, and even online, I will be real and be like, I'm having a hard day. But the thing is that I actually have struggled with depression, and I still struggle with anxiety. I have a lot of anxiety with different things spark it. I'm sure part of it is being a woman and the hormones hit and stuff. But, that's a real challenge, and that's definitely a joy stealer. And that is something where, you were talking about having fun and how that person found, joy from having fun and found a way out of depression. Now, depression is going to come in all different waves. And as far as, sometimes it is as easy as having fun. Sometimes you need to get help. And so I want to encourage people that definitely do not be afraid to get help. It's really important. But at the same time, there is a biological factor that happens when you have fun, and that's that it releases endorphins, and so does exercise. There's lots of things that are so important to that, and so there's definitely like concrete things that on a biological level that are important to incorporate but like sleep, right? If you're not simplifying life, then you're not getting the sleep you need. And the sleep helps with releasing other hormones that are going to help with depression and help with, there's so many, it's like so multifaceted. But I did just want to make sure that people know that, the struggle is real. We as moms, I think we bring things on, and we can find that we are sitting in a pit of depression sometimes. So we just have to be really careful with the choices that we make.
Yeah. And many times the faces can look all happy, but inside you might be struggling, and you might not even know it. You may not even understand your struggle until, something happens, and all of a sudden you're just seeing yourself going, what is going on in my life, type of thing.
Yeah. So. And that's the beauty of joy, is that joy is not by circumstance. Happiness is a circumstance. Happiness is an emotion that you feel in a moment, but joy is something so much deeper. And, the Bible talks about how the joy of the Lord is our strength, and how, there's so many verses about joy in the word. And I encourage people to really dig deep and do a word study on joy. But it's amazing how even in some of the darkest times in our lives as a family, as, individual, I can still find that joy that comes from the Lord. Even when we lost my father-in-law a year ago, and as heartbroken and hard as it was, God really did bring us joy in that moment. And one thing my husband said that was so powerful when we were all literally sitting around sobbing, he's like, what a blessing that we're this affected by it, because it means that we loved deeply. And I think sometimes the more that we are loving even on our family, that's sometimes where the pain is. But at the same time, we have to look at that as that is a blessing.
Yeah. Well, and I love looking for the tender mercies. That's what I've been doing a lot lately. We've been going through some hard times, but every day, if I can look for wow, these are the ways that God blessed me in my life, and feel the happiness that I feel with that, I think that makes such a big difference in how our perspective is with our struggles. But,
oh, yeah.
Well, tell me, how do you feel like your paradigm has changed over time and with experience? You've been married for 20 years. You've got a 15-year-old. You have a lot of experience in this realm. Give us an idea of how you feel like that's kind of evolved.
Well, I really do feel like I was striving for this picture for a long time back, from even just early parenthood. I wanted to be that mom. I think I enjoy hosting a lot of things. And so obviously when you're going to host something, you put your house together, and I love cooking, and we love having people just stay at our house. We love doing that. But there was an element where people started literally dropping the word Martha Stewart. You're such a Martha Stewart, but that increases all this anxiety in me that I have to live up to this picture and pressure. And I think even with homeschooling, so it's I kind of feel like the paradigm in both areas. So as a homemaker and a mom, but also from the standpoint of homeschooling, I wanted to have it all together. I wanted to do it right. I didn't want to mess my kids up. And, and that was a big thing. And that's where my focus was for so long. And I think where the paradigm shifted is that realizing that, what? I am God's child, and my kids are God's children. My marriage, my husband, we are God's. So I think what helped me is when I started really looking for ways to simplify what we were doing, I didn't have to do everything. And so I don't. I tell people that all the time. It really does, like you were saying, you do a lot of things, but I don't do them all at the same time. One week I might do a video, another week, I'll do this. And so I'm pacing myself. I do a little bit at a time, but that's what's interesting is that it really, in the big scheme of things, it looks like a lot. So when you just do a little bit at a time, I've simplified. We have more joy in our home because I'm less stressed, and not all the time. When I have deadlines, my husband's like, okay, simply joyful. I'm like, I know. But that really has been the big thing. And with homeschooling, the big paradigm shift, I think, was, it's so easy. And it seems obvious, like we focus on homeschooling to focus on education, but really there's a bigger picture. And I think homeschooling is really a lifestyle for us right now. It's how we disciple our children. And that is that we are focused on their character. We are focused on raising individuals who are going to be just awesome people. I want my kids to know what it looks like to be a husband and a wife. I want them to see what a healthy marriage looks like. And sometimes that means that, my husband and I have to show them how to communicate when you're frustrated. And, we really fight really hard to make sure we are very respectful to each other, because we know what an impact that has on our kids. And so that has been the biggest thing for me, I think, is just refocusing. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, refocusing our priorities, simplifying where we can, and just giving myself a big break, because I'm a much better mom when I stop and I just sit with my kids and we talk, we do something, we play a game, and, just really enjoy the fellowship, because the time and that's the funny thing too. When you have like just little kids and people go, you have those moms that come up to you and they're like, oh, enjoy this. It goes so fast. And I'm like, nah, dude, it goes fast. Come over and babysit so I can sleep. But now I have that perspective. My son is 15 and he towers over me. And yet I have this 4-year-old. So I find that I'm really savoring my time with my little kids, because I am daily reminded of how fast it goes.
Yeah.
And, and I know that there's just going to continue to be seasons in my life where things are changing. But I think to really stop and realize that this is going to go really fast. And so I'm trying to really relish in each day and enjoy each day as we have it. I feel like that's usually my prayer, is like, just slow the clock down, because it's just, as much as like when I just had my 2 little boys, we just had our oldest 2, they're 18 months apart. I remember praying like, can I put them down at 5:30? Would that be bad? Would they wake up at 3? So I was tired. My husband traveled. So yeah, I think that's really the biggest paradigm change for me, is that I don't have to be perfect, and it's okay. And what I love about online is that people really like it when you're not perfect.
Yeah, exactly. Also, I'm like, okay, yeah. She's not perfect either. Yeah. Well, and I don't know why I feel like I should comment on this topic or this subject, but something you were saying was reminding me of just the little drops in the bucket. Like I was listening, I'm a big podcast listener. I mean, I love podcasts, obviously, but I was listening to this guy talk about how he wrote a book, and he's like, yeah, you'd have all these people like, wow, you're an author and you do all this stuff. And he said, but they don't look at the, like, every day he didn't write a book. He just sat down and wrote a page, and then the next day he'd write a page, and then 2 days, he'd skip 2 days or whatever. But then he'd come back on a Saturday and sit down and write, just a few more pages, and that really adds up. And I think that's really what our homeschooling can be like too. Like just those tiny little intentional drops in the bucket make a big difference over time, and that we can do a few drops in a bucket versus, trying to pour the whole thing in. Does that make sense to you?
Oh yeah. No, cramming for books, cramming for everything. It's not fun. But same with the kids too. Like, right? I mean, I would like to go through. I remember when we first started, I'm like, oh, okay. I was reading about all these different types of educational styles. I'm like, so you go through history, creation to modern day 4 times. Perfect. I can do that. I can totally pull that off. And like, we barely made it through like volume 1 of Story of the World. I think we made it like maybe 10 chapters. And I was like, okay, this is going to take a little bit longer. So but that's okay. My kids are learning and enjoying it. So yeah. And we're looking for character as we read and study. And
exactly.
And so, yeah, it's been fun.
Before we go on, please listen to this message. Do you know a young person who wants to avoid student debt yet ignite their future? If so, don't waste your time going to college. Join the fire starters over at Praxis. Praxis combines an intensive 3-month professional development program and a 6-month paid apprenticeship with a dynamic growing company and guaranteed full-time job placement. No degree is needed to get started. Whether you're an ambitious go-getter right out of high school, a creative thinking college student who is bored sitting through classes, or a college grad looking for something better, discover Praxis. Get exclusive Firestarter information about Praxis by going to discoverpraxis.com/mind. Welcome back to The Luminous Mind with Kristi Clover, helping us live simply and be joyful. So really understanding that why and putting those drops in is the important thing. Like, know that just a few little drops of the most important things are going to make the biggest difference versus doing everything. And, and then realizing later down the road, like, oh, whoops, we forgot to put character in there.
Oh, yeah, because you will knock your bucket. I mean, if we're going to stick on the bucket analogy, you will knock your bucket over and lose all those little drops if you're not careful, because our kids' hearts are so tender. And I was blessed with having a guest on. His name is Andrew Pujois, and those in the homeschooling community were like, oh, we love Andrew. Well, he talked about motivating our kids. And one of the things he talked about at the end was how he really tries to be intentional about giving 10 compliments before he even makes one correction. And that's really hard to do as a parent, because we walk downstairs in the morning, we're like, look at the to-do list. Let's all snip, snap. Let's get to it. But taking time literally counting it out is so challenging. Okay, I can't ask them to do, or, to comment on this or correct in this until I've given 10 compliments. And it is interesting how you really it trains you to start looking for the beauty of these hearts and of our kids, and to see the person that they're growing into. Well,
and I'm usually the other way around. I come in and like, oh my gosh, what did you do? And then I'm like, oh, okay. I think that's, and I do it totally backwards, which is my falling, but
I do it too. I'll do it. I'm like on a really good moment of a day, like I do it right. But usually I'm like, oh.
So with all of the things that you have, we talked about, you have courses and podcasts and books and just tons of different information that you are just, like I said, go to our website and you'll be like, whoa, this lady is busy. But maybe give us 3 key points that you feel like our listeners really need to hear about your message, I guess.
About my message, I'm like, live simply and be joyful. There. No, I'm kidding. No, like my core message is that I have a passion for encouraging moms and families really to find simple solutions for more joy-filled lives. So really the 3 key points that I think I really try to help people understand is to really take a hard look at what your goals are as a family, and not just like, my goal is to get to this weight and to exercise every day. Really look at what blueprint are you putting together for your family, for your kids in the long run? Like, what do you want life to look like in 10 years and 20 years? Do you want to have a relationship with your kids? What kind of character qualities are you looking what character qualities do you want in your kids? And break it down. What scripture backs that up? What activities can we do that exemplify this particular character quality? So really, I think breaking down and getting a big picture view of what your goal really is. And so if you want to call that a priority, awesome. But that is really one. And then I really encourage people more than anything, if you do nothing else in the day, you have got to find ways to get into the Word. And hey, I struggle just as much as others. And I have been blessed with the inability to hide it when I have not been in the Word, because I'm cranky naturally. So if anybody ever sees joy, please see the Lord covering that. And it is God. Because I really do need time in the Word. I need time to be refreshed. I need Him to fill me so I can pour out to others. Yeah. And some days it's awesome. And I will actually get like maybe 30 minutes before somebody wakes up. And sometimes it's 5 minutes. And sometimes I am stealing 5 minutes from another part of my day where I'm like, Mommy needs a timeout. And let's be really honest. Sometimes we go in the bathroom and lock the door with our phones, and I keep an app on the Bible. And you know what? Maybe I just stand in there at the sink and I read a little Bible. And it's, we just have to find time to get in the Word. And then really the last thing is that have fun. Don't take yourself so seriously. I think that we don't take enough time. And that's one of my big tips for when people are having a really hard day in homeschooling or just with your kids in general. There's obviously a fine line between like when you're having a hard day because you have a child that needs correction. That's not a day to be like, and now let's have fun. No, like correct the behavior. But, overall, a lot of times we find ourselves frustrated. We have to step back and take a break. And so whether you have to clear your schedule or anything else, that was actually one of the weird blessings that we found, that when my father-in-law died, we were able to come to a complete halt as a family. I ditched everything. I came offline. I stopped doing all the other things that I was working on. Actually, Homeschool Basics was in the works at the time. My in-laws had actually been watching my kids the day before because they were, I was working on the book and my husband was out of town. I'm like, hey, if you watch the kids, I can focus. And so, I took a break from that. I stepped away. I had been planning to launch the podcast. That got postponed. We had other things on our calendar. We just ditched them. We just said, I'm so sorry. We can't do that right now. And it's amazing how easy it was. Like you think like, oh, to clear my schedule, it's so hard. It's so hard. You really can. And it's amazing how you can do that. And so how much more of a blessing is it to do it when you can be purposeful in it than when you're forced to? Because we were forced to. We had to withdraw. We had to have time to heal. But ultimately, like now, it's like when I find that we're all getting tense, then we do try to start clearing our plate and start seeing we need a day, we need a weekend. In fact, when my husband and I, since we did just celebrate our anniversary, we got away for 5 full days together because part of it was a marriage retreat and part of it was just time together for our anniversary. And I had not realized how long it had been since we had gotten away without kids, without work. A lot of times we like call work trips. Oh, we're away together. Oh, you had a meeting? Okay, go. But really pulling away. And that's so important to do in your marriage. It's important to do with your kids. Date your kids, date your spouse, but date your kids. Get them alone, especially if you have more than one kid in the house. Get them alone. So they have their personalities just come through, and it's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I love the fact that you put prioritization and some time in the Word together, because I really feel like if you don't have time where you're meditating on the gospel and what God wants in our lives, we can't find the perspective and the true principles of why we're doing what we're doing. Do you know what I mean? I see that those are like woven together. They're interconnected. And if we're not doing those two things together, where we're in the Word, we're questioning our motives, we're questioning, making sure that we're really operating on principles of truth, I think it's all going to all fall apart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those have to be interconnected together. So, and I wish as a young mom too, one of the things I remember having some days when the kids are like not motivated and I'm not feeling it and we're all frustrated and all I'm thinking in my head is like, we got to get through this. We just got to get through this. I really wish as a young mom, what I would have done is like, let's go on a walk. Let's get out of here and go on a walk. I can see so much wisdom in that, of just pulling yourself away. And as a young mom, I think we can't do something like that because then we'll never come back to it. That is not true at all. Sometimes you just need a break, right? I mean, you got your podcast up and launched and you got your book finished, even though you were able to kind of step back. Sometimes we all need that, to just step back and to really, listen to ourselves, I guess, and find that joy again.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, awesome. So tell me, what do you feel like is some feedback that you have received with your message? How are you helping others to be more successful?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. Well, the joke is that motherhood is like a thankless job, but it is interesting when you step out and you kind of, I'm not necessarily a professional mom, but, it feels more like a professional mom when I am opening up about my life and the challenges that we've had and what I'm doing to, to bring more joy and to simplify my life. And it's been interesting to see the reaction from moms, the more real that we are and the more practical. Because that's the other thing, is that I feel like there's a lot of great advice out there, but I'm like giving the facts. Like, I don't know. I joke that I'm a total oxymoron. Like, I'm very logical and I'm very creative. So it's kind of nice for people because that means that you're going to get creative ideas broken down into practical steps. But that is really the thing, is that as thankless as your job as a mom is, and I'm not saying that everybody needs to go out there and have a public life, but it is spectacular because I probably get daily emails, notes, messages, comments from just my readers, my listeners, my viewers on YouTube. And it's powerful when you see because it's definitely a lot of work for me. I don't have to do this, but I do it because I feel like it's a calling that God has put on my heart. And it's a message that he has really placed in my heart. And he keeps opening all these ridiculous doors for me to step through. But it is amazing. And I think that, man, it's humbling, really. That's, I guess, the bigger thing is that when you see that people are saying, I was about ready to throw in the towel with homeschooling. I had somebody actually contact me and she was starting to blog about homeschooling. She's like, I actually almost quit homeschooling until I found your homeschool organization course. She goes, I was so overwhelmed and sick and tired of just being stressed out over homeschooling. I figured I was doing more harm than good. And it was crazy to hear that because here's a veteran homeschool mom who, bought my course and it really helped her. And that's what I hear over and over again. And it's powerful. It's really crazy to see how God can use, little old me. I don't feel that special, but it's been neat to see how he's taking the things I'm naturally passionate about and some of the different types of gifting that I think that he's given to me and how when I step out in faith and use those, how it does make an impact. Because you really think I'm doing all this for nothing and it's tiring, but he just... he really has been faithful in that. And I think that that's been one funny thing that I've been laughing about on the podcast is that I get all these amazing authors and, people who have ministries on. And I feel like over and over again, the message is that when we really look at our lives and look at what are the passions and the dreams and the gifts and the strengths that God has given you, how can you look at your life now and find a way to use those gifts? Because I think where we get stuck a lot of times as moms is we have these big dreams when we're single and young and, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then we become moms and we're like, our life is over. I'll never do that again.
Laundry and dishes, laundry and dishes.
Laundry and dishes. It just keeps haunting me. I know I get all excited when I finish all the laundry in the house. I'm like, oh, I'm so good. This is so awesome. And then 3 days later, I'm like, why am I out of underwear again? But it is crazy. I mean, granted, one of my solutions, I'm like, I would just go out and buy more underwear so I have a longer supply, but no, for the kids especially. But, that I think is interesting is we sometimes have to change. It kind of comes to that paradigm shift that you were talking about. We have to change how we're viewing it. So yeah, I'd not at this point, God has not opened doors for me to be a contemporary Christian artist. I love worship. I have been singing since I was 15. It was a huge step of faith. It was one of the first things I really felt like God asked me to step out of my comfort zone and do. And I have been singing for a long time, but it is not, a lot of my audience has heard that, but they've never heard me sing. My church hears me sing, but it's just, but I found contentment not in pursuing this dream. I found contentment in serving at our church and singing to my kids and, finding different avenues like that to use that gift and to use that passion. And so sometimes it's going to look really different than we thought it did. Maybe we're not painting, the Sistine Chapel, but man, we are sitting arm in arm with our kid and painting, a picture or, so you were a photographer. Well, then, there's so many ways to use our gifts. And I think that seeing how God has how God's done that in my life and the passion, and it really ignites me. I feel like using my gifts has helped me through a lot, even some of the depression and things, because it's nice to feel used. So I don't even know if I really answered your question there. I kind of talked in a big old circle.
I think that's when we find our joy in life is when we find what kind of our mission or, Trisha and I spent a long time talking about, walking out our life's mission type of thing. But when we find the way that we've been blessed with the talent and we turn and we can share it with others, that is going to be an enormous amount of joy for us, more so than, necessarily getting laundry done, although those are exciting times too, So learning how to find that way that we can bless other people's lives, I think is really awesome. I think I've done a really poor job about telling everybody about what your website is about and what you're going to find there. But do you want to give us an idea? If we go to kristiclover.com, what can we see there and how can you help us? What are you doing to serve other people on that website?
Oh, you're adorable. So, I mean, overall, like my message is what I had mentioned, like simple solutions for a more joy-filled life. And that is what I filter everything that I do. So I do have a blog, and the blog is called Raising Clovers. And I talk a lot about motherhood, faith, and, I talk a lot about homeschooling there. I share recipes and meal planning, home organization. So a lot of like the quick, easy writing. A lot of my blogging right now has been guest posts for other blogs and articles and things like that. But I have the podcast, and the podcast has been fun. One of my passions is books. And so it's been really fun to have all these authors on and to talk about their books. And again, I'm always trying to pull the message of finding simpler ways to do things to bring more joy. And so I try to bring that out in the podcast. And then I actually am a weirdo, and I love being live. I love talking to people, and I love speaking. And I think what's been fun is that I can't speak every day, every weekend, all that stuff. So live has been a really fun outlet for me because I can jump on and talk to people. And whether it's a Q&A, I tend to do homeschool Q&As on Friday on my Facebook page, but I also create videos, and it's just been fun. Again, a lot of it's just like, what am I feeling creatively inspired to do today? And that's what I kind of put my message behind. But overall, what people are going to find on my site, like I always kind of joke, like my hardcore niche is homeschool organization, but pulling back from that, it really is my heart is to encourage moms. My heart is to help people get organized and to help people find joy. So it's really, there's a lot on my site, like you said. Oh, yeah. You're going to find videos, you're going to find resources, you'll find things on homeschooling, you'll find things on home. But yeah, really encouragement, help with your home, and help with your homeschool.
That's awesome. Well, like I said, I've been having so much fun just talking to her. I haven't really even been able to talk about it, but I'm glad that you're able to share with us, just living simple, being joyful, those types of messages with us. What habits do you feel like are really helpful in your personal life to help us kind of get to this place?
Well, I would say your mornings are the most important habit. Mornings can get away from us so easily when you have little kids. And everyone's like, oh, it's a season. Well, I have 5 kids. So that season kept repeating and repeating and repeating. Like, that is not fair for me right now. I feel like my girls, they're 6 and 4, and they're getting there, but they, I have a tripwire in my house. Apparently, if I get up early to have a quiet time, I apparently step on it, and they wake up and come down and find me. Even when I'm hiding, they find me. And like I almost need a prayer closet just so I can hide, but they know where it is. So that I think is the hardest thing. But no, just really, I try to be purposeful in the mornings. I feel like if I just am that purposeful and smiling, like that is the big thing. I try to start each morning with hugging each child, telling them I love them, telling them something positive about them, telling them how excited I am for us to get to hang out today. Like like, I am so excited to be spending time with you today. It's not cheesy, but you know what I mean? Like I tell them, like, their value. And I really, and right there, I probably admitted my 2 love languages. I am a words of affirmation person, and I am physical touch. So I definitely speak that loudest to my kids, but I try to create some quality time. I also try in the evenings. I've been trying to get better at closing up shop, getting off my computer, focusing the last several hours of my day, just, around the table, laughing. Are we playing? We'll watch a movie. We'll do different things. We do have like my boys are in sports, so we have nights where we're driving them to practice and things like that. But I try to be as intentional as possible. And that's what I really feel like has been the biggest benefit for me, and the habit that I find helps me the most in my personal life is just really being intentional.
Yeah. And that morning time seems like when you can have a really great morning and just get those key things done for yourself. I mean, like you said, time in the Word, some time to maybe write or do some of those types of things. Some reason it helps my morning go better or helps the rest of my day go better. Just by having a really great intentional morning and then trying to lock that up with the evening thing. Sometimes that helps us have a better morning.
Yeah. And it helps me unwind at night too, because I feel like I'm usually pretty spent by the end of the day. But if we're doing something that's more fun and, that like even good conversation, I feel like it really does help me to unwind in the day. And I have to say that as moms, we tend to talk about our kids all the time. But as a wife, like that is another big thing that I have to constantly work on is that, my priorities are my time with God, my husband, my kids, and then my homeschool, and then my home. And so that's the order of my priorities. But often I feel like my husband almost, accidentally doesn't get my best all the time. So that's something I've been really working on is being more intentional with him. And I mean, and you can read between the lines on that too, but like just being intentional always, like, just making sure that I am verbally making sure that I'm communicating with him, my love and my respect for him and, appreciating the fact that he works really hard. And I think sometimes we forget about that, that our husbands are putting in, a lot of work in order to pull us all together, to provide food and, and moms work too. And so I think that we all need to be intentional with appreciating what the other person are doing. But also, I think the biggest thing for my husband and I were figuring out each other's love languages, because that is not words of affirmation and physical touch are not my husband's love language. He is a acts of service. And so my perfectionist tendencies took that as a little bit of a direct hit. And so I have just really learned to communicate with him on what are some things that really speak the loudest to you. If you could pick 2 things that I will intentionally try to get done in the house that speak love to you, what are those things? And so, yeah, that's been a big thing. But I do want to make sure that I don't leave my sweet husband and all the husbands out there out of the conversation. We have to be equally intentional with them too.
Well, and really, that's how you're going to be successful in all the other things that maybe don't matter as much as having that good, really great marriage relationship. I think we really don't put enough emphasis on that in our society at all, that how important that strong marriage is for the whole society, anyway, it's very important. I'm so glad you mentioned it. Thank you. Well, let's talk about maybe, you've already done so much, but let's talk about long-term goals that you have for yourself and how you hope that's working into a legacy. That's one of my favorite words. Whenever somebody passes away, I think of like that legacy. And for some reason that just stuck with me from the time that we lost our grandmothers. I just love that word. So I want to hear how those long-term goals are working into that legacy.
Well, the beauty is I feel like everything that I do is really a resource for my daughters and my sons and my future daughter-in-laws, my future husbands, my future, sons-in-laws. Wow, that came out wrong.
Who will be husbands, right? Yeah.
That's right. Oh, my word. but ultimately that's kind of legacy. I want, like, legacy-wise, I want to be known as a woman of God, a woman who, as even you were mentioning Trisha, a woman who walked out her faith, a woman who walked for the Lord and did not forget her priorities and loved my husband and loved my kids and, really made an impact on people's lives in a really great positive way. So that's the legacy I'd like to leave. And I think that some of my long-term goals, for our family, it's, that we do have a family that is centered on the Lord and that has fun together and really enjoys for the rest of our lives, enjoying time together. I really want our home and our family to be the type that comes together and just enjoys spending time together. But from a professional standpoint, I don't say this all the time. So this is like sneak peek, hidden information. My real long-term goal would be to have an actual show. So am kind of putting things in the works and I'm getting pitches together for different companies and different, studios and things like that to start pitching about some ideas that I have. And so, writing is a big part of that. So, producing more books, and I'm going to be creating some more courses. But no, that's really that's my crazy goal, the crazy thing, which is probably why I like live, because it's just again, that's like kind of my element. I'm very comfortable being in front of people and being in front of a camera. So I think it's a kind of a natural, flow. So,
You're definitely not an introvert then.
No, in fact, no, I'm like 98% extroverted.
You can hear it in your voice.
No, I totally laugh because I joke that I'm an oxymoron, right? Like I'm polar opposite in love, but not that. Like I am 100% pretty much like, okay, so 98% extroverted, but on the little Briggs-Meyer test, I am like right down the middle on all the other ones. It kind of depends on the day, on whether or not I'm, I don't remember all the other letters because they always get jumbled for me. But I am an E. I'm a solid E. I'm an extrovert in all caps, bolded, with underlines and exclamation points and stars. So
that's awesome. I love the joyfulness back again. I mean, it really does come down to the emotions that we feel and how those are affecting, our children and how that will affect generations. I think just by having those great relationships and those relationships of joy that we're sharing with other people. Before we say goodbye, do you have any final parting words for our listeners? And then give us your contact information, how our audience can go on and get your free book and all the wonderful resources that's online for us.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it's been so fun to be on here. But my parting advice, honestly, is to get your knees dirty, moms. And I mean that spiritually. We are very familiar with cleaning floors and doing the whole Cinderella thing and getting our knees dirty that way. But I think unless we are exercising our spiritual knees and really coming before the Lord and coming before the throne, then we are missing it. We are missing all that God has for us and for our family, because we've been given such a gift in being able to pray so intimately for our family. And so really praying for our husbands, praying for our marriage, praying for each kid individually, praying for what does God want for you to do today? And I will tell you, it's not always writing a blog post for me. Sometimes it has nothing to do with that. It's all about my family, and that's okay. And that's why it's funny, because when people sign up for my little newsletter to get the Sanity Savers for Moms, like that is one of the little caveats I put on there. I'm like, I'm not always consistent. So if you want consistency, you need to sign up so you actually see where I'm consistent. I have been consistent with the podcast, but that is because I have a team that helps me. If it was up to me, it would not be consistent. So I get done what I need to get done, and they make sure it all gets done on time. So, but yeah, that's really I would say my parting words is that there is so much power in prayer. And if we just take time to really be praying, to be a prayerful people, I mean, that's what I love about the word is we need to be praying consistently and constantly and praying for each other and really coming to battle, because that is one thing in the word. It talks about we are not like, we feel like we have all this, external battles going on, but the real battle is for our hearts and for the hearts of our husbands and the hearts of our children. And I think if we aren't taking seriously our charge as mothers to really be praying, then that's a big one. So there, I'll get off my high horse there. But
no, I love that.
But if people want to find me, they can find me at KristiClover.com. That's Kristi with a K and an I. And Clover, just like 4-leaf clover. And actually, if they go to KristiClover.com/join, they will they'll get my Sanity Savers for Moms book for free. And they also get weekly updates about what's going on and just an encouraging word. I have content on there that I don't have other places. On there, I actually share a lot of my favorites and some. I've been slowly switching over from the homeschool season to home organization season. And so I'll be sharing about different, products that I use that have been really helping me simplify what I do in my home. So it's been a lot of fun. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the best place to connect with me is through my newsletter. And of course, I love social media. So, they can follow my podcast. They can follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook are really where I'm most active. I have a Twitter account. I'd love for you to follow me on Twitter. I don't do anything with Twitter. Twitter's a copy of everything everywhere else. So
yeah, exactly.
So and actually, I've honestly just been loving Instagram lately. I've been playing around with like Insta Stories and Instagram Live. I do go live on Fridays at 12 noon on Pacific Standard Time on my Facebook page. So that is one time that I do try to be intentional about getting on live.
Well, and I don't want to keep you from that because we are on a Friday and we're getting close to 12 o'clock your time. But I really appreciate it. I really hope that they see that that interwoven thing that we were talking about before of how we have to be in the Word and we have to be always assessing, simplifying our lives by assessing our real priorities. I think that hopefully that's been the message that we've delivered today and helping you spread the message of living simply and being joyful. Again, you can get a free copy of her book, Sanity Savers, and I just got it. And when you get it, there are a ton of downloads with it, or like downloadable pictures that are awesome. Things that can help you organize yourself and things like that. But you can go to KristiClover.com. We're going to be sure to link all the information that we've discussed today on our website as well. But thank you so much, Kristi, for coming on and joining us to lighting our minds on fire on this important topic of just keeping our lives very simple and joyful. I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me as a guest. I've just loved it.
Thank you for listening to The Luminous Mind. To learn more about Kristi Clover, go to our show notes at theluminousmind.net. Be sure to become a subscriber to our free email list and get our new monthly newsletter. Then check out the Services tab to see how we can continue to assist you, our fire starters. Also, to help us continue production of illuminating content, go to the Sponsor tab at theluminousmind.net for more information on sponsorship and affiliate programs. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, Google+, Pinterest, and now Instagram. Get our free audio content by subscribing on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. To help us grow, consider these easy ways. Tell your friends about us, leave us a review, share our content, tell us how we can help you, so together we can continue to light minds on fire and change the paradigm of education.